Okay, so in the last class, we have reviewed the RSA encryption system, and also we have given a brief introduction to the hash functions. Now today in this lecture, we'll complete the discussions on hash functions, and also we'll introduce MAC functions and digital signature to you. So we were here mathematical definition of the hash function we have already given, that it is a mapping from n-bit string to k-bit string where n is much larger than k, with the three required properties: pre-image resistance, second pre-image resistance, and collision resistance. So pre-image resistance is saying that given the digest, it must be hard, computationally hard, meaning there should not be any polynomial time algorithm to compute the message from which the digest have been computed, or any message whose digest is the same as that is given to you. And the second pre-image resistance is saying that given a message, you have to find another message whose digest is same as the digest of this given message. And the collision resistance is demanding that it should be computationally hard for the attacker to find any two messages from the set of messages in bit strings whose digest values are same. So if all of the three computations, these are the computations required by the attacker, the attacker's objective is or are computationally hard, that means they cannot be done in polynomial time, then we say that the hash function is a secure hash function. Also, we discussed that there is a theorem in cryptography, although whose proof we will not discuss here in this course. In cryptography course, we will study it in detail, that collision resistance implies both of the pre-image resistance and second pre-image resistance. That means, in other words, if a hash function is collision resistant, then it is also pre-image resistant and second pre-image resistant. That means if we can prove that a function, hash function, satisfies the collision resistance property, then it is synonymous to say that the hash function is secure. That's why in security literature you will observe that secure hash function and collision resistant hash function, these two phrases are used interchangeably. Now the questions are how to design a hash function. Okay, how should we design an algorithm or a function which would take an n-bit string and will produce k-bit string with satisfying the three security requirements. And the second question is, suppose we design such a function which takes n-bit string as input and produces a k-bit string as the output, but how can we prove that or how can we verify that the designed hash function really satisfies the three security requirements? So we'll see the answer to the second question first. That means, how can we verify whether a newly designed hash function has satisfied all the three security requirements, that means pre-image resistance, second pre-image resistance, and collision resistance, or not? The answer is using random oracle model. So using random oracle model. So then what is random oracle model? Random oracle model is a mathematical model for cryptographic hash functions. It was first proposed by Bellray and Roggway in 1993, and it is used to prove the security properties of a newly designed hash function. So random oracle model is a mathematical model. It is modeling what? It is modeling a hash function. Okay. So what are the desired properties of random oracle model? There are three required properties of random oracle model: repeatability, unpredictability and independence. If you look into the literature, that means if you look at different types of cryptography materials, books, study materials, then maybe in different places you will find different types of different varieties of definition for this random oracle model. But if you understand it, then you will see all the definitions are saying the same thing actually. I have presented it here in my way. If you understand it truly, then you will see all the definitions given in book also are saying the same thing. I have written it in this way so that it becomes the easiest way for understanding the random oracle model. So random oracle model, what is an oracle? Oracle is something like this, a box, a black box which can take some query and will give you some response. Okay. Query is denoted using the notation Q and response denoted using the notation R. So it is black box in the sense that we do not know what is going inside this box. That means, in other words, we do not know what is the algorithm that is being used inside this box. But we can give some input and it is bound to give us some output. The query, Q and response are. Anything such type of thing is called oracle. Now why it is called random oracle? It is called random oracle because it need to satisfy three properties: repeatability, unpredictability and independence. What these three properties imply? That I have tried to model or explain using this algorithm and this table. Suppose this is just for explanation purpose only. You do not do the mistake that this algorithm is getting executed inside this box. As I have already mentioned that this is a black box, so we do not know really what is going inside this box. But the behavior of the box, that means behavior meaning what inputs, what outputs we are getting by giving what inputs. If we do a statistical analysis of that, we do not have access to the code running inside the box. We do not have any access. So that is completely black box. But as I said that it is an oracle and it is bound to give you the outputs for any number of inputs chosen by you. So we can decide a huge number of large number of inputs and then can record the outputs, corresponding outputs, and can then perform a statistical analysis to capture the behavior of this box. So that behavior, what we observe, if it is truly a random oracle model, we have captured using this algorithm and this table setup. What it is saying, we can assume as if that this random oracle model is using this algorithm. What is this algorithm? See here, this is very simple, that when it is receiving, so it is maintaining a table, okay, a simple data structure, you can say, a table which has two columns. One is the input and second one is the output. Input is the query and the output is the response. So it is maintaining a table. So any entry if you see, the Q part is the input and R part is the response. Now whenever you are sending a query, it first looks into the table. There is a table lookup. If the Q part is found as the input in the table, then the corresponding R part is returned. That means, in other words, if you have queried the same input earlier sometime, then as you will see the else part, what it is doing, suppose it is not there, Q is not there in the table, then it picks an R randomly from the codomain. This notation I have already explained in my previous class. This left arrow and R over it, that means pick a random element from this thing, whatever is there in the right hand side set. Here the codomain, since random oracle, as I have said, that it is taking an input and producing an output, is a function, is like, not like a function, it is exactly a function. So the set of all possible inputs is called the domain and the set of all possible outputs is called the codomain. Now it is saying, so any input you give, I have to pick some element from the codomain definitely, whether I do randomly or if I do some computation, I have to return some element from the codomain. Now it is saying you purely pick some element from the codomain. purely randomly. You pick some element, like suppose if there are two possibilities in the codomain, suppose the codomain size is 2 and the possibilities are 0 and 1, then just do a coin toss, unbiased coin toss, and if it is coming head then return 0, and if it is coming tail then return 0, you return 1. Or suppose if the codomain size is 6, then you can use a Ludo dice and roll the dice upon receiving the request, and whatever output you are getting 1 to 6, you return it. Similarly, if the codomain size is n, you can assume I have a dice with n faces and I roll the dice, and whatever output I am getting, that I am returning. So you may be wondering that how can I program such thing, or how really it is possible I cannot have a dice with n faces. Well, that also can be modeled. Suppose if you can represent any integer with k-bit string, so you can just toss a coin k times, okay, or you can use a random number generator which generates some number between 0 and 1. So if the number is greater than 0.5, then return 1. If it is less than 0.5, then return 0. So that is modeling the coin, and if you toss the coin k times, then you will get k random strings. So if 2 power k is equal to n, then you will get something between 0 and n minus 1. This way you can generate a random element from the codomain. Again, I am saying this is not the algorithm getting executed inside the box. We are saying that the way that we are viewing this random oracle can be thought of like it is running this algorithm, but not, we don't know really what it is running. You will understand. Let me finish the discussion, then you will understand that what I am trying to say. So what we were saying, that upon receiving the request, first check the table. If the request already is there, that means the request was made earlier also, then there should be some entry in the table and then return the same output. Otherwise, you pick a random element from the codomain and then return that random element, but also at the same time make an entry in the table with the input and output value. That means record it for future use. Okay, so that means if you have queried it earlier, then it is returning the same value because it is there in the table. So it is a very simple algorithm. Okay, as a note, I have added here that any randomized algorithm, not only hash function, any randomized algorithm which satisfies the three properties, repeatability, unpredictability, and randomness, independence, can be abstracted as a random oracle. Now, let us understand how this algorithm is satisfying all the three properties. Repeatability, easily you can understand, because we are using, we are recording the value here in the table. So if you repeat the same input, then definitely all the times you will get the same output. So it is satisfying the repeatability property. Second is unpredictability, or in other words, you can say randomness. However, ensuring the randomness, this is also very easy to understand, because we are picking the element output randomly from the codomain. So this way we are ensuring the unpredictability. You give any input, but you cannot predict what would be the output. Unpredictability meaning what? That you cannot predict any bit of the output until you get the output from the random oracle. You will not be able to predict any single bit of the output from the bits of the input, or even if you have thousands or millions of inputs and outputs available in your hand, you have previously queried the random oracle 1 million times and received pairs of 1 million inputs and outputs, but with this knowledge also you will gain zero information regarding the output if you generate a new input. Okay, if the input is there in those 1 million entries, then definitely you have the output. But suppose you then generate a new input value, a message, then you cannot predict a single bit of the output. That means you cannot predict a single bit of the response from the input and from all the input output pairs that you have in your hand. Fine. So that is unpredictability, and here how we can be sure that unpredictability is getting ensured, because we are picking the random element. We are not looking even into the input. So it doesn't matter what outputs we have previously generated or what is the value of the input. Definitely it will be random, completely random. And independence requirement says that even suppose we have two input values m1 and m2, you can say two messages we have m1 and m2, and the corresponding outputs are suppose d1 and d2, or in this terminology you can say that two inputs are there, q1 and q2, and responses, corresponding responses are r1 and r2. Now if there is any correlation between the two inputs q1 and q2, statistical correlation, suppose 50% of the bits of q1 and q2 are same, or 80% of the bits, or 90%, even 99% of the bits of q1 and q2 are same, or maybe they are the complement of each other, or whatever, there is a correlation between the bits of q1 and q2, then the correlation between the bits of r1 and r2 should be 0. Okay, I repeat again, if there is even 99% correlation. What do you mean by 99% correlation? That means suppose the size of query is suppose 128 bits. Then the first 127 bits of Q1 and Q2 are same. Only the last bit is different. Then we can say almost 99.99% bits are same. Okay, roughly I said, you have to calculate the percentage, but roughly 99 point something same. But still the correlation meaning correlation between the bits. If you execute a statistical test 1000 times, million times, then you can measure the correlation between the bits of the output. If you take correlated inputs, then you will measure that the correlation between the output is 0. That means, in other words, you cannot predict a single bit of R2 even if you know completely what is R1. You cannot predict a single bit of R2 even if you know completely R1, Q1 and Q2. So that is independence. So here in this model, how we are being sure that this independence property is preserved, because again the same thing, that what is Q1 and what is Q2, this algorithm is not at all looking into that thing. It is receiving a value and it is picking a value from the codomain completely randomly, not looking at all whether the corresponding input is correlated to something or not. So definitely the independence property also will be satisfied. So you first understand this algorithm. Again I am repeating, this algorithm is not getting executed by this random oracle. Random oracle is definitely running some other algorithm. But we are saying that we are just explaining, try to explain repeatability, unpredictability and independence properties. That if there is some model like this, then we can assume that we can be sure that this is satisfying all the three properties. So the behavior of random oracle is explained using this model. Now the theorem says that any hash function in the cryptography, there are in fact three theorems we will study in the cryptography course, that any hash function which satisfies the properties of random oracle model will also satisfy the three essential security requirements for a secure hash function. Okay, what this theorem is saying, in fact it is actually a set of three theorems. So any hash function, so first suppose you have designed a hash function, newly designed, you have designed a hash function which takes n bit input and produces k bits output. Then you have to show, you have to prove that it is satisfying the properties of random oracle model, meaning it is satisfying the properties repeatability, unpredictability and independence. Then the theorem already proved that your that your hash function will also satisfy the pre-image resistance, second pre-image resistance and collision resistance properties. That means you do not need to separately now prove that your newly designed hash function is secure, because it is satisfying the first, second and collision resistance properties. The theorem has already proved that if a newly designed or any hash function is satisfying random oracle model, then it will must satisfy the three security properties. That means, in other words, it is secure. So what is the advantage of this theorem? The advantage of the theorem, see here, when you design a new hash algorithm, how can you prove directly that whether it is pre-image resistant or not, whether it is second pre-image resistant or not, or whether it is collision resistant or not? So proving it analytically or experimentally is impossible. Analytically it is very complex because the design of the algorithm may be so complex, because as you will see later after some time that the design of hash algorithms are actually very complex. Complex in the sense that there are many circuits, many number of operations, mathematical operations being executed, and number of rounds, 70 to 80 rounds are there in standard hash functions. So mathematically analyzing the time complexity of the algorithm is very complex, and there is no way to experimentally also to verify whether it is satisfying the pre-image resistance, second pre-image resistance, or the collision resistance properties. However, whatever be the complexity of your algorithm, newly designed algorithm, complexity meaning here I am not talking about the time complexity, meaning the design complexity. Okay, how many circuits are there, how many mathematical operations, how many rounds are there, in that sense, not in time complexity. Time complexity, it must be polynomial time. As I have already said, any hash function must be polynomial time, that which we have pointed out here also. It must be easy to compute. Okay, any hash function. Okay, now so but when you design a hash function, it is very easy to test whether it is satisfying the properties of random oracle model or not. Why? Consider the properties. The first property is saying repeatability. Now if you are using a deterministic algorithm to implement your hash function, then definitely this repeatability property will be satisfied. And remember that all the hash functions that we design are actually deterministic algorithm. I repeat again, all hash functions are actually deterministic algorithm. Don't do the mistake that people do this mistake, that since a hash function produces some random output, we say in that way that hash function randomness unpredictability requirement is also saying that thing, that it produces a random output, so from any given input, so it is a randomized algorithm. No, it is a deterministic algorithm, as you will see in detail in the cryptography course also, the design of a hash function. Here in brief we will just try to show you the idea of hash function, but in detail we will see in the cryptography course. So those are deterministic algorithms only. The deterministic algorithm which takes the bits of the input and shuffles the bit and then discards some bit and then produces some bit. So which looks completely random. You cannot predict the bits of the output from the given input, the bits of the given input, but that does not mean that the algorithm itself is non-deterministic. No, the hash function, any hash function, whether it is MD5, whether it is whether it is Whirlpool and many other algorithms, all hash functions are in fact deterministic algorithm. So hence, if your algorithm is deterministic, then definitely it is satisfying the property repeatability property, because a function always produces the same output unless otherwise it is a non-deterministic algorithm. Second and third properties, unpredictability, meaning randomness, whether the outputs are completely random over the codomain or not. How can we check that thing? And the second thing, the third property, independence, that we can do using statistical test. Once you have designed the hash function, we can take millions of random inputs, random messages as input and execute the hash function and record the outputs. So now you have 1 million or 2 million inputs and corresponding outputs are generated from your designed hash algorithm. With that in our hand, 1 million or 2 million input output pairs, we can execute some statistical tests. What type of statistical tests? The third one already I have said, that you just take correlated messages, correlated where 80%, 90%, 99% bits of the inputs are same, and then measure in how many cases there is a correlation between the outputs of the output bits of the output, and you take random messages, random inputs where there is no correlation in the input, and then also measure the correlation, you will see the correlation remains the same. That means they are uncorrelated. You have to test it statistically. Similarly, you take for the second property, you take random messages and then check the output bits are uniformly distributed over the codomain. Output value is uniformly distributed over the codomain or not. If it is uniform, that you can test easily using a histogram. You can plot a histogram. You can just count how many times a specific output is getting generated, and then can plot a histogram. From that you can plot the probability distribution of the output, and this should be a uniform distribution over the elements of the codomain. Then only we can say that the output is unpredictable, because there is a uniform distribution of all elements in the codomain. So these two statistical tests can be performed to check the unpredictability and independence requirements, and for that we have a number of good software, statistical testing softwares, for example freely available in the internet. NIST statistical test suite is the most well known test suite used by the statistical people or the cryptography people. Also you can freely download if you wish from the internet. NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology by USA. This is a standard software using which we can test the unpredictability and independence. So, and as I said that if you are using a deterministic algorithm, then it is always repeatable, satisfying the repeatability property. So once you design a hash function, you can easily test whether it is satisfying the random oracle model or not. And if it is satisfying the random oracle model, then you don't have to worry. The theorem in cryptography, 3 theorems are there. They have already proved that if it is satisfying the random oracle model, then it will satisfy the pre-image resistance requirement. If it is satisfying the random oracle model, it will satisfy the second pre-image resistance requirement. And if it is satisfying the random oracle model, then it will also satisfy the collision resistance requirement. Fine. Okay. Now, next question that we are coming, how to design a hash function. So the detailed design will not go into details. So there are some good examples of hash functions that MD5, SHA-1, SHA-256, Whirlpool. I think, as I have already said in the previous class, that when you download some file from the internet, you have already observed that some hash digest is also downloaded, which is called MD5 digest or SHA-256 digest, which you have to match with the downloaded file to check whether the file has been downloaded intact or some bits have been modified or not. So now how to design a hash function. Basically all these MD5, SHA-1, SHA-256, Whirlpool, they use this construction called Merkle-Damgard construction. What is Merkle-Damgard construction? So you take the original message, this is the original message, and then you do some padding so that it becomes a multiple of n bits. Multiple of n, the size of the message may not be exact multiple of n, so you may have to do some padding so that it becomes integer multiple of n. What is n? N is the block size used in the hash function. N is the block size used in the hash function. For example, as you can see, SHA-1 uses 512 bits as the block size, SHA-256 also use 512, etc. So different hash functions as SHA-384 or SHA-512 uses 1024 bits as the block size. So block size meaning you have to divide the input message in different number of blocks, consecutive blocks. Then as you can observe, there are several rounds inside this hash function. It is computed in several rounds, ... there are several. How many rounds are there? As you also see in SHA-1 there are total 80 rounds, in SHA-256 there are 64 rounds, in SHA-512 80 rounds, like that. So SHA-256 maybe there are 80 rounds. So in each round what it is doing, it is taking two inputs. One is the block of that iteration. For example, the first one is taking the first block, the second one is taking the second block, in that way. And also there is another input you can see, that the output of the previous stage is also given as the input to the current stage. That means the output of I minus 1th stage is given as the input to the ith stage. So what would be the input to the initial stage? We take a constant which is called initialization vector. The initialization vector is a constant used by the hash function. So the output of the final stage, is actually the digest of this message. So output of the final stage is the digest of this message. So in other words, what we can, and these functions, round functions, these are called compression functions. Okay. Why these are called compression functions? Because it takes n bit inputs and produces m bit outputs where m is less than n. As you can see, this is m bits and this should also be m bits because the functions are same. The same function is repetitively used in number of rounds. As I have said that 80 number of rounds are used in SAR 256. I mean SAR 256 uses 64, SAR 512 uses 80, this thing. 80 rounds. Okay. Now, so that's why these are called compression functions, because it takes n bit inputs and produces m bit outputs where m is much lesser than n. Also, you can see the size of the total message is a multiple of n, some multiple of n, whereas the size of the digest is only m bits, the final digest of the final stage. Now, this compression function can be designed in two different ways. It can be designed from scratch, and it can be designed by modifying some block cipher algorithm. The block cipher algorithms, I think, already have been discussed in the previous class by the TAs. So you all are already familiar with block cipher algorithms. So one of those block cipher algorithms are modified to serve for this purpose. However, some algorithms like MD group of algorithms, SAR group of algorithms, all they use algorithms from scratch to design the compression function, whereas this Whirlpool is an example in this category, which uses you will see is the cipher blockchaining mode block cipher to do this thing. So this is an overview of SAR 512. As you can see, the message is a multiple of blocks, or if it is not multiple, then we do the padding and then you make it multiple of blocks. In SAR 512, the block size is 1024 bits. So it is iterating number of rounds, and each one is taking the output of the previous stage. So output size of output of a compression function is 512 bits, and size of the input of a compression function is 1024 bits. However, it is also taking another input whether it is initial value or the output of the previous stage, that is also 512 bits. That means each compression function is taking total 1024 and 512 bits and producing one 512 bits. Now, one thing I forgot to mention, what is the specialty in this Merkle-Damgard construction? The Merkle-Damgard proved that if you design a hash function in this way, and if this compression function satisfies collision resistance property, then the entire hash function will also be collision resistant. Okay, I repeat again. If this compression function, all these functions, Euler boxes are using the same algorithm. This compression function, if it is collision resistant, then any hash function designed using this approach will be collision resistant. So that means when we are designing a hash function, we do not need to worry about the big size message and how to do this thing. You have to worry about this compression function only. You have to design a hash function which is satisfying the collision resistance property, or which is following the random oracle model. And this is the design of Whirlpool. So as you can see, in Whirlpool we are using a block cipher algorithm. So here the block size is 512 bits, so we are dividing the message into 512 bit size blocks, and then in each stage we are giving that as one of the inputs, and another input is used as the key. Initially, this is the initialization vector that is used in the first stage as the key, because this is a block cipher encryption algorithm. So encryption algorithm definitely requires some key. Here the first stage takes the initialization vector, which is a constant, as the key. The second stage is taking this thing. This circuit can easily explain you. As you can see, there is an XOR operation among three inputs. The first one is the output of the previous stage, which is the initialization vector in this case, but in this case you can see this is the output of the previous stage. The second one is the block itself, and the third one is the output of this stage. Okay, so this stage output, the previous stage output, and the input to this stage are mixed together using some using the XOR operation, which now serves as the key to the next stage. Okay, so the output of the final stage here also is the digest. Okay, so this is Whirlpool. So in the detailed design details of how the compression function is designed and what is there inside this block cipher, is this copy of the encryption algorithms AES or DES? No, this is a modified version of AES, but in detail we will start in the cryptography course. Okay, let us take a break here and then we'll continue.